Hey, welcome into the Husker247 Podcast. I'm Mike Schaefer, joined by Michael Bruntz, Brian Christopherson, and it is officially football season. Practice began on Monday. Bruntz and BC were on hand for the open portion of the practice. We'll dive into their thoughts. But I want to get started with this right away. I don't know about you guys, but there seems to be a lot of Kool-Aid being served around Nebraska football right now. Have you noticed this online from our media colleagues, or sort of where are you at? Let's do a Kool-Aid check right now. Michael Bruntz, do you sense this? Am I off? Do you think there's more optimism than in previous off seasons, or do you think that the start of fall camp has ratcheted up some things? There's been some people that have thrown around fringe playoff team stuff.
So I think we discussed this before, but it always seems like once fall camp starts, like whatever your predicted win total was in like March, it's probably, I think, normal to tack on like a win, like get one more win on what you thought. I think that happens every year, I think. But no, I mean, I think a fringe ranked team. I've seen the fringe playoff talk. I don't know. I think Nebraska's kind of in that pool of teams with like Illinois. Who else in the Big Ten is in that mix? Is USC? Are they still in Nebraska's
USC,
yard?
Michigan, Nebraska. I think those are four teams.
I think
don't
Washington
think anyone. Yeah, Washington's a good one. BC. I don't think anyone thinks Iowa is a fringe playoff team. But they're in that mix when you look at, and then Indiana, another one where, again, I'm pretty skeptical that they're going to have anything like they did last year. But those are, is that 5-6 teams there that are all kind of jockeying for that number 4 spot in the Big Ten right now?
I would not have put Nebraska in kind of that midfield pack since like what, 2019, 21. So yeah, I think there's a fair amount there's more optimism at this point in the fall than maybe what we've seen in the past. I think part of that's schedule related. I think part of that's the Matt Rule 3rd-year bump. I do think Nebraska's gotten better. Like, I think they've improved their roster. I mean, I think I would feel comfortable saying that I feel that it's a better roster than what they've had the last couple of years. So I don't know. I get it. I get why you're kind of stirring the purple Kool-Aid a little bit. Not grape, it's purple. And so I get it.
So I was the guy who was like sitting outside my house last year, just offering up Kool-Aid to anybody. I was 9-3. I felt very high on what I thought Nebraska was going to accomplish in 2024. I've kind of gone the other way this year. I think it's almost a defense mechanism at this point that I don't want to be that far over my skis 2 years in a row. But BC, are you kind of same thing, sensing a little extra juice, little extra excitement as we get into the fall camp? Is that the same for you as well? Like, do you get a little extra pep in your step now that football practices have actually started and we're at the end or close to the end of talking season and the games are just around the corner?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you always want to think you're going to cover a good football team too. Like, there's that part of I think everyone around here, media, fans, is hopeful that it's going to be a bump up and an exciting kind of season. And Rule's a good spokesperson for his team. I mean, he, without trying to sell, he does really well at selling. Just like, even talking about the defensive line and using that quote, like, oh, they're going to be hell on wheels. And he's building up their belief probably trying to, that, hey, you're ready for this, by saying something like that. But, he says certain comments like that I think get people elevated a little bit. And also the offensive line. I think most people think about the trenches when they think about if a team is ready to take a step. And I do think there is fair reason for cautious optimism that the O-line can be pretty good, especially looking at, we can get all into it. But I think a couple of those things are why. And then Dylan Raiola in year 2, there's just that thought like, okay, what could he do after the lessons of last year? So you put it all together. And I feel like I should be wearing one of the the tuxes or whatever at a party serving the Kool-Aid, because we relay the quotes that get said and certainly are part of it. So I do think, though, this is a time of year, as Bruntz said, the person who said 7-5 back in March are like, it's 8-4, 9-3 really, if they get to, handle October like they should. So yeah, and that's fun. I like that. Sports should come with hope. It should, that's a fun part of sports.
So do we want to do it on this podcast or the next podcast? We run through the schedule again, see where you guys are all at. Because I think we were all 7 and I don't know that anyone was 8-4.
I was 8-4. I was
were you 8-4?
Yeah.
Okay, so then I guess I was the 7-5. So
you guys are 8-4.
Like
that program that hires the opposite guy from the predecessor that they just fired. Like you're swinging back the other way.
I reject
this
that.
Is your Mike Riley year.
You guys are just imagining that Nebraska will finally prove that in the fourth quarter it can finish football games, and I don't know that that's necessarily the case until they actually do it. So I do think Brian Christopherson has been saying this since roughly 2017, that whenever things will go well for Nebraska, it's going to be like it's not going to be the incremental thing. Like it does seem like if it goes well, they're going to have like the big sort of, I use Minnesota, I think 2018 as the example, where they were undefeated and they finished 10-2 or 11-2 that year. Like that's the kind of season that I do think when it happens for Nebraska. I just don't know that I think 2025 is that year. But maybe we'll get into how opening practice went, what you guys heard, all of that starting right now. I mean, so there's the opening media portion. I guess I'm kind of interested in the mechanics on this. And I know that there's also the amount of work that gets divided into it because we're trying to take photos and video and all of that stuff. But when you guys were over there on Monday, how was it sort of divvied up? Like, what was there an area that you definitely wanted to get eyes on, just to sort of get a sense, even in that small amount of time? Or was it mainly just like, hey, we got to get photos of some of these newcomers or some of these different guys or things like that? What was the game plan going into Monday, Bruntz?
Kind of all the above. There were a couple position groups I was curious to see. I think the line was a big one for me, both lines, kind of seeing both of those groups. And it's interesting. Like we had seen some of these guys too, like in late June, at camps and stuff like that. So it wasn't like a total mystery, but, I was curious to see the lines. I was eager to kind of see the wide receiver group, especially because, I didn't see a ton of Dane Key and Isaiah Hunter in the spring periods that we got. I was curious to see Cortez Mills again. So I'm more offensive focused, and we can get into, I thought the offensive line, that's probably the deepest group that I can remember. In terms of guys that look like they have a chance if they need to play. Like, I don't know about your UBC, but like if you absolutely had to, and I'm not saying this is going to be like what Nebraska's going to do rotation wise, but there's probably 9 guys,
name them,
even more than that you would feel okay with putting in a game right now if you had to. Like it's I don't think that's a stretch to say, given the seniors and the old guys they have coming back and kind of the development of some of the younger guys.
It's the best I've ever. Yeah, we can go through the names.
Yeah, run through the names just so people, because you're saying I have an idea of what or who you're thinking, but
so going left to right, you had Gunnar Gatula with the first group ahead of Elijah Pritchett. I think obviously both of those guys have played and started at this level. At left guard, it was Lutovsky, who looks great from even what he was last year. Justin Evans at center. I think Sam Sledge could go in there and play some center if they needed him to. Spillner's at right guard. And then outside on the right side, you've got Tyler Kanak. You've got Teddy Prohaska and also Turner Corcoran over there in a green jersey. How many is that? That's got to be pushing 10, right?
You said 5 tackles, and who did you name extra interior?
Yeah, Sledge and Evans.
Oh, sorry. Sorry.
I'm trying to see the guards. It was Machachok was with the second group, and who was the other one? Was it Pyle?
Yeah, Pyle's come on. That's what was said at Big Ten Media Days. He's had a nice off season, and Machachak's the guy people forget about, but I think is one of the on the cusp fringe guys that's in the younger group. So just keep him in mind. But yeah, Bruntz named them all. Kind of connecting to it, the interior of the O-line is probably I don't think I've felt as good about that trio that's starting in a decade. Really, I mean, think about it. That's going to sound like it's overhyped, but from left guard, center, right guard, think about all the years you could rarely go through and be like, oh, I like that. I like that. I like that at all three spots together. Like you might like two of them, but when you have Latovsky, who sometimes played the best football on the team last year on the O-line, I mean, Evans, who they're really high on what Evans can do.
It does seem like he might be, if just going off of how they talk about him, their best offensive lineman.
And I do think he's a good center. Like, I just think he's going to be a quality center. And I don't think they're going to take a step back there, at least. And then obviously with Rocco Spindler, who played on a team that was in the championship game. I'm just saying from left to right at those three spots, you're like, that's nice. That's a nice starting point. And then it helps when you see Teddy Prohaska and Gunnar Gatula healthy again, actually out there. Like in the spring and all the summer stories, it's on paper stuff and it looks good there. But then you actually see their body type and you hear that Teddy like had a 29-inch vertical, which is very good for a 6'10", 320-pound man who's come off multiple serious injuries. So he's testing well, looking well. Gatula, I think, has come to play. Like, I think Gatula, we'll see how that shakes out, but that was my biggest takeaway Monday. Bruntz and I think both kind of thought this, like, tackles competition's interesting. Like, I'm not saying like Pritchett's going to get bumped out. Maybe he wins the job. I'm just saying someone's going to have to really earn it there. And so that's a good thing.
Is there a world where both Pritchett and Gatula are tackles? One of them's just on the right side? Or do you think they want to keep one of those guys or keep them both on the left for sure?
I mean, it could be. They got some time to tinker, and obviously Gatula could be, I think, an option on the right side. Elijah's played there too. But, yeah, that's possible. I kind of think it's going to be one or the other at left tackle, and then either – I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I think Tyler Knack, some people kind of bump from the conversation like he's going to get moved over. I'm not positive on that. We'll see. I think he had a really good spring, and Bruntz can speak to this because he was in the interview in the hallway with them. He was a guard last year, right? And he made the move to tackle, and he just feels like it fits his body type and his skill set much better, and he's really run with it.
Well, I think he was initially a tackle and then moved to guard and then moved back. He definitely has like a tackle reach, I think, that you would like to see. So I don't know. He's intriguing there. I think he's a guy that I don't think gets enough credit for. I mean, obviously we're talking about between the sideline stuff, but I mean, he's a real key guy on that offensive line group and certainly as a recruiter. I mean, a lot of the transfer portal guys, he's a host for freshmen or high school guys too, that, he's got a pretty good record of closing on guys and getting them in the program.
Yeah. I wanted to make sure we mentioned that. And that usually you're not putting someone in those positions unless you really value them in some way or another. So I think that speaks to how this staff thinks about Tyler Knack. So we talked here the offensive line. I want to jump over to the defensive side, and I kind of want to start with this, and we're going to go with BC here on this one. Brian, do you feel any similarity with how Rule is talking about the defensive line in 2025? If you go back to what things were in 2023, you remember how they were sort of viewed in that offseason, and yet Matt Rule was pretty bullish on what he had. And we didn't know that Ty Robinson was eventually going to be big-ass Ty Robinson. And I don't think anyone was anticipating that Nash Hutmaker was going to be as good as he was in 2023 when he was completely healthy. Is that the sort of situation we could be looking at here again in 2025? Because, again, Matt Rule is very bullish on the defensive line, and he's got a lot of track record of having great defensive line almost every year of his career.
Yeah, I mean, it is very similar to how we were talking about it on the outside, because if you think back to 23, and we've discussed this, but it's worth reiterating now, like, was it Stephon Wynn? Was he a guy who like went in the portal? Some names like that. Maybe I'm mixing years, but there's a couple names that went in the portal, and it's easily forgotten now. But like in June or May of that year, it was like, oh my gosh, how are they going to, do this or that with those guys who departed? And by late September of 23, we're like, this is going to be a top 10 run defense. We basically kind of knew that. I don't want to twist it. They have a lot to prove. They can be called a question mark, and you can still think that they might answer it. I think you can have both those thoughts. Like, I wonder about this group. They have to go prove they can be durable and go 6 or 7 deep, and think they possibly very well could do that. And Matt Rule's track record suggests there's a good chance they can do that. And the one thing they have going for them, and I think Bruntz would say this after Monday, is they really look the part. They do. Like, they're an impressive looking crew. I mean, we don't know what Williams-Nwaneri is going to be, but I mean, that guy's a freak just to look at. Keona Davis is the same way. Van Poppel made remember when he stood next to Tyson Terry in that photo? And Tyson Terry's a large man. He's going to get bigger. He'll become like Van Poppel in 2 years, but he made Tyson look small in that photo. And so they are really a put together group. And that, I was thinking too, like, we've covered some D lines where like DeAndre Thomas was a fine player, but he was like starting at the nose, like not starting, like key snaps against Oregon on the road as a true
270 pounds.
We've seen D lines in a lot worse shape going into a season than this one. Not that that's the selling point people want to hear, but but I mean, there's a lot more to work with than some defensive lines that we've tried to talk ourselves into in the past, is all I'm saying.
So what you're saying is,
take a look at this.
Nebraska's defensive line. At least it's not 2017.
Exactly. No, I don't. But you know what I'm saying. I mean, we've tried to do the off-season carousel where it's like, yeah, that can work, and we squint and all that stuff. And I don't think you have to squint hard with this group.
Okay, so that raises a question. Is there anywhere you feel like you are kind of squinting to sort of make things look a little better or minimize how bad it might actually look? I don't know what squinting. I don't know how to describe squinting accurately there. PC is squinting currently into the camera for those listening at home.
I think, running back, right? Like,
running back.
There's a lot of attention being paid to Isaiah Mosey, and I think that's partially because of everything else that's there or not there, right? Like, yes, he played running back as a senior in high school, a very talented player, but there's a lot to be sorted out behind Emmett Johnson there. And Matt Rule said Monday that Quentin Ives had a little bit of came up lame, in his word, in that first practice. And beyond that, there's not much proven production there besides Emmett Johnson. So there's a lot of work to be done on that group over the next 4 weeks. I think you're squinting a little.
Did it strike you as odd that this was visible all the way back into December when Dante Dowdell went into the transfer portal?
Yeah, I mean, I do think they have a higher sense of belief in what they have or can be and how they can develop than maybe some on the outside. And actually, Dowdell's the example, because EJ Barthel talked about this in the spring, how like he wasn't coming out of spring last year. Dowdell wasn't like thought of as like necessarily even the second guy, remember? Like fourth or fifth guy. And so by the end of the year, he became someone where it was viewed as like a valuable possession that was lost to not have him on your team anymore. And their point is, we helped that guy get to that point, and we can do the same thing with this collection of guys. The thing they have going for them is they do have 3 or 4 options, which you could convince yourself can become pretty good. So if you have that many options, if like 1 or 2 of them can hit, then you're all right. But I agree with the take by Bruntz that that would be the one I squint the most at.
What else stood out for you, BC, when you were over there on Monday? Whether it be the open portion part or whether it just be hearing the guys up front at the podium.
Yeah. I think what stands out the most is there's more competition across the board. Like even the secondary, I believe like has a second line of guys that I wonder if someone, I'm not saying it'll happen by the time they're at Arrowhead, but like a month or two in the season, I wonder if someone bumps someone out of a job. You know what I mean? Like that kind of, like, I think they have that kind of potential, and I'm not calling a shot on who that's going to be. I just think there's a group of like 6 or 7 names beyond like the 4 or 5 we always talk about that are like juniors or seniors that are going to be hard to keep off the field in some way. And I think as you go across the position groups, there's more of that than there has been the last couple of years. So that's why I think some of the Kool-Aid is where it's coming from, is that there is a belief that there's actual like a two, like the second group you have guys that are probably more capable or closer in margin to the first group than there has been. So I do think that stood out sort of in just looking at the guys, kind of eyeing them, and then hearing the players talk themselves. So I guess that's a main takeaway. I believe Rule really likes this football team as much as he says he does. Like, I don't think there's any inflation of that just to try to get people fired up. I think he thinks they can be really good.
You should put a position group on it. Are you talking secondary? Like, is that where your mind goes when you say something like that? Because I when you were talking, in my head, I was thinking like, oh, I could see in the secondary where there's going to be some young guys that are
specifically at corner. I mean, if
even
safety. And I don't know that Sierra Wright. Well, I want to start with corner and then we can go to safety. I don't know that Sierra Wright is written in Sharpie, but it does seem like maybe he's the safest there. And so then after that, though, you go through the list of names they have at corner. There's a lot of viable options, whether you think it's an Andrew Marshall or a Jameer Khan or those versions, those guys. That was Bly Hill a year ago, pre-injury.
Jeremiah Charles has had
Jeremiah Charles. He had a start against UCLA, so they obviously felt good enough about him last year to put him in that position. You have Donovan Jones. You have Amari Sanders from the 2024 recruiting class. So, I think Larry Tarver's inside. I think Malcolm Hartzog is going to end up as a nickelback based on how they've talked about it. But if we're talking boundary corner, they have a lot of options out there. And it will be sort of interesting if someone can just seize that opposite of Sierra Wright. And if people are actually pushing Sierra Wright too. I mean, like I said, I don't know that it's written in Sharpie, but I think the way that he played last year, he at least deserves the early opportunity to show whether that's a continuation.
Yeah. I like the back 2 levels of the defense on paper. The guys you mentioned in the secondary, I think the linebackers are sneaky, like deep. Like you go back to John Butler saying he felt they had 3 deep at 2 spots. I think the emergence of like a Jacob Bauer, people kind of forget about that story, but like he's going to has a like kind of a John Bullock way about him that you wonder if he's going to work his way into it. I think Watson Trent's going to be really valuable as they hoped. Shavers, it's exciting to see where he goes in year 2. And I guess the way to look at it is we're not having like a lot of conversations about like the true freshman class of backers that just came in,
and they love those guys.
An awesome group, really, to have recruited. And in years past, kind of to my point about like when DeAndre Thomas was having to play snaps 8 years ago or whatever, there have been times where that would definitely be the case, where we would be talking about 1 or 2 of those guys having to maybe pop up or do something. And maybe one of them will. I'm not saying they can't. But there's depth there where you have that wiggle room where that doesn't have to be the case necessarily, which is a good thing.
Hey, I want to get back to safety because Bruntz mentioned that as well. Let's run through some of those names that are back there. Obviously, you have Deshaun Singleton and Marquise Buford, but beyond those, I mean, who, Bruntz, do you see as kind of the real challengers in that safety spot? Because what's interesting about Singleton is the way that he was talked in the spring. He doesn't necessarily I don't know that they are going to use him as a traditional safety all the time. Like, he might move around a little bit in this defense for John Butler.
Yeah, no, I mean, he was more as like a hybrid type player than anything. I don't know. I mean, that redshirt freshman class, I mean, I think you have to look at guys like Caleb Benning that are close, I think, to being on that two deep, that took the redshirt year and were able to grow from it. I'm just looking at the list now for, who else could kind of emerge there. And what I don't know either, it feels like over multiple staffs and multiple defensive backs coaches, there's kind of been this willingness to mix and match guys a little bit. If a corner is, you need to get him on the field if he can help you at safety. I mean, is even like a Jameer Khan, like, is he the type of guy that could step into a safety type role, maybe somebody like that? I mean, I think that's a possibility as well when you kind of start moving the pieces around. As much as I just talked earlier about the offensive line and having, that next group of guys coming up, it feels like the defensive back group is kind of similar, but in more with more of those younger guys that are kind of pressing. I mean, Braylon Prude, like, where does he kind of fall in the mix? I mean, he traveled, I think, almost to every game towards the end of last season. A guy like that. I mean, I don't know that. Yeah, I mean, I don't know that they eventually, right out of the gates, they're in that role. But maybe by the midpoint of the season, maybe they've played their way into a little bit more playing time.
The thing you can always count on is there's going to be somebody, like a name that people, I'm not saying start, but like will be like maybe on the two deep the first week it comes out, where you'll be like, oh, that's interesting. Like, and it'll.
You want to make a prediction right now?
No.
Jacob Bauer, you want to lock it in?
Yeah, he'll be on there. This isn't my prediction, but there's going to be like some, like last November, like Rex Guthrie, like, came up from Tony White, like, as a name. And so, like, sometimes people aren't even paying attention to somebody, is my point. And then all of a sudden you realize the coaches have really liked this guy and he's been that close. And I'm not calling my shot on that one, but like Jameer Khan, I think is going to be on there. And we didn't talk hardly at all about him in the spring. Mm-hmm. And part of that's because Butler did a good job from their angle of, I think, protecting the individual talk more so this offseason than
he was others. A little hurt too. I don't know that he was going through all the.
That might have been it, but I could see him being like a backup nickel to like Hartzog, something like that. He'd be a guy that'd be in that mix. I thought Caleb Benning was a good one to mention because I think he's had an outstanding offseason and legitimately like in that mix. And Donovan Jones, I think, is versatile still. Like, maybe there are a lot of corners, but he's a guy worked a lot at safety last year, so you could move him there too if you wanted.
You got a name, Bruntz, that you think could be a deep cut?
A deep cut?
It could be either side of the ball. I mean, we're talking defense here, but it could be on offense too.
Is Kenneth Williams going to be one of your?
What's funny is I was going to bring that up if nobody else did.
They had 4 running backs last year, as you recall, all with oars. Does he sneak in as the 4th back based on how things go? I mean, they put him out. He returned the opening kickoff against Boston College in the bowl game.
They like him. They really like him.
They do. That might be one guy that is going to pop up on there. He's going to be there somewhere. Like, I could see a special teams role even for him, but that would be a guy that I would think for most would be a little bit out of left field.
Are there any defensive linemen, that come to mind in that regard? Because I don't know that Jalen George comes out of left field, but that guy didn't really have much of a spring, so it'll be interesting where he's at. Does a Mason Goldman end up on the 2 deep for Nebraska? Is there somebody else? Can any of the freshmen and I don't know what the status of those guys are. I mean, is there anything like that could shake out differently with the defensive line?
It would all
go ahead.
Instead of the freshman, it would only be able to be Peter Zach, because I think Simpson had off-season surgery.
Terry definitely.
Terry's obviously with the knee. I mean, is Dylan Parrott? Does he pop up on there as like third string defensive tackle? I don't know. I mean, that might be one guy that would be in that role.
Parrott, Goldman, Ochoa, sort of as a jack D lineman.
I like Ochoa.
Would be someone that would be in that mix. Yeah, I don't know if George would apply. If you're looking elsewhere on the roster, there's like names I get curious about that pop into my head, and I have no idea if they're on the fringe or not. Like a Justin Rhett type, like you wonder like if you hear something about him or like. But yeah, that's why camp's always interesting. Like 2 or 3 weeks in, sometimes there is sort of that surprise factor, and I think the D line, maybe because of some of the names we mentioned, that's why Rule and those guys are kind of confident, because I think maybe there's a belief that like sort of those Dylan Parrotts, those Goldman types that aren't always at the front of the conversation, they're good enough to give you some valuable work perhaps and add to your depth, and the idea that you can hold up for the grind could be.
I'm jumping around here, but now we're just getting deep enough into the roster. I just want to ask, have either of you heard anything regarding a Demetrius Bell or a Keelan Smith or a Quinn Clark? Because, you spend a lot of time when we talk receivers, we talk a lot of the same names over and over. And then you throw in now the 2 freshmen in Cortez Mills and Jeremiah Jones. But what about those other wide receivers that are a little bit further down, maybe in the pecking order externally? But is there anything that could happen for any of those guys where they could potentially see more playing time than you would expect?
Well, Bell's still limited. I saw Keelan Smith out there. He, I think, was also limited a bit in the spring.
He was limited in the spring. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Quinn Clark's interesting. I mean, he obviously looked much different than anybody else in that room. Jeremiah Jones is not much smaller than Quinn Clark. Like, he is a large human. So I don't know. I mean, Cortez Mills is going to be in that rotation. Like, there's very little question in my mind about that. But Quinn Clark started to travel towards the end of last year. That to me, when that starts happening later in the year, that's a guy that gets my attention, at least, because that means the coaches have seen something in practice to bring him along, even if a guy's not part of the game plan. So I think that caught my attention, and he looks good. Like, he looks like the kind of guy where you could go out there and throw a ball up on third down and he'd go get it. So I don't know. I mean, I think there's room on kind of the back half of that wide receiver rotation for some of those young guys to work in a little bit. Jones is interesting, though. I mean, he came from a small school in Kentucky, kind of similar, and not to the degree that he was productive like Carter Nelson was, but a guy that kind of had to do everything, did do everything. And
kind of more Ja'Cory Barney-esque, I think, would be in that what he was sort of playing and what he had to do and the way he was utilized by his high school team. And, I think, sorry to hijack what you were saying there, but I do think sometimes guys like that benefit greatly when they get somewhere and they only have to play one position. Like, I'm fascinated what Ja'Cory Barney as a wide receiver is like after getting to spend an entire year focused only on playing wide receiver and not having to do everything else. Like, I think there's a chance that there could be a really big breakout there just because he only had to play, like, he just only had to run routes or only had to, he didn't have to learn to be a defensive back. He didn't have to be a gadget quarterback. He wasn't lined up as a running back. And he can do all of those things for you in sub packages. But I do wonder with a guy like Jones, same thing. Like, they're not having to spend time playing defense or all this other stuff. And I do think that helps when you can kind of lock in on one spot. Sorry.
We should do an oddly specific prediction portion of the podcast for the whole season. I'd be curious to know what you guys don't say it, because I want to know later as we get close to the season, but what your catch number prediction is going to be for Barney this year, given where he was last year and role and everything else. But we should do that pre first Hypecast or something, because I've got a couple other prop bets that I would be curious to know what you guys think.
We could do a fall camp Hypecast for sure. Maybe coming off of Saturday's open practice, we can really kind of bring back a we'll get back into having a few more podcasts per week, I think, too, as the season gets closer as well. But we can combine the fall camp hypecast with another record prediction podcast and just fuse those two together, so people kind of get it all right there. That could certainly be a thing. What else did you? We haven't. It's really refreshing to not have to spend a lot of time talking about the quarterback situation because it's so locked in with who it's going to be. But behind Dylan Raiola, what, if anything, was said on Monday regarding Nebraska's quarterback operation after Dylan?
I don't think anything was said.
Yeah. It's kind of wild, right? Like, it's just the quietest sort of quarterback conversation fall camp that we probably covered in a while.
Though it is interesting because if you had gone back to December, I would have probably guessed, I don't know, I might have guessed Marcos Davila number 2, actually, and he's 4th right now, I think. Latif has come up in a flattering way from Rule a couple times, said how, when he got to the Pinstripe Bowl, the weather was terrible out there, and he was spinning it well in the wind and all this stuff. And I think he's impressed him, and he can move a little bit too. So that's kind of a dynamic you think about, if you were in a tough spot, and you have a QB who has a little bit of mobility. I think he has some of that to him. But it looks like Gramstad's the guy, backing up, and you're relying on, just someone who knows the offense inside and out, who has a lot of confidence in himself too. Obviously he was the NAIA player, offensive player of the year, won a championship. So he's been around winning football. It's down a few levels, but I was struck in the spring by how much belief, which I guess you would expect to get to where he has, but he hasn't himself. But the fact that he's sort of, I think, secured himself as number 2 is not surprising now. But if you go back 8 months ago, maybe it would have been.
Latif's interesting though. It's again on paper. I think the pecking order is that. If you had to put somebody in, who are you? I think there's an opportunity in this fall for Latif to make up quite a bit of ground. I didn't get much out of the Husker game stuff, but he looked okay to my eye. He looked like a guy that could move well, is willing to get out of the pocket and move a little bit. But he threw the ball better than how I kind of had it in my head. So I don't know. I mean, that probably, we need to probably ask about that a little bit more about.
Yeah, that's fair.
How that's coming along. But no, I agree with you though. That conversation for the backup spot. I mean, now from where it was, last year, and even probably back into January, it's night and day. From what we would have said, probably.
Yeah, Rule brought up Latif unsolicited at the side podium at Big Ten Media Days, which was interesting. Just that he made sure to mention him.
I think what's fascinating is he's got to be the quietest, near 4-star or Elite 11 quarterback commit that Nebraska's really ever added. I mean, no one talked about him at all in that class. No one really talked about him even when he was an early enrollee, other than, a little bit about his time at the Pinstripe Bowl. And I know you guys have similar people that you talk to or there at spring practices. His name came up a bunch. He was making plays. He had, a practice where 3 different people that I know were at it basically told me, hey, he was really good today. Mm-hmm. I don't even know that Dylan was practicing, but he was with the ones and moving the offense, and they were very complimentary of him. So he's kind of a really sort of fascinating guy, because I do wonder if, anything were to happen, you had to turn to somebody. I wonder how confident they could be going to another true freshman a year later, if they needed some sort of long-term answer or something like that. So it's certainly it's an interesting conversation behind what we already know is going to be the guy in Dylan Raiola. So I at least wanted to bring that up. Well, the only thing we really haven't talked about today, guys, is special teams. Is there anything you want to add in that regard?
I don't know if we know a lot yet.
Bruntz's face says no.
I mean, the punter.
I mean, he can
Name
kick
is
the
Archie.
12 feet. That's kind of fun. It's fun.
Yeah.
I don't. Aside from just charting field goals, what do you guys think we will legitimately know about special teams as we walk into, what is it? Is it still Arrowhead?
You might learn some names of the guys who are going to return kicks or punts or whatever. But I don't think there's going to be anything that it's probably be a few games before you really have a feel for stuff.
Rule mentioned in one of his interviews in the summer, he was talking about Ja'Cory Barney. This isn't like a big surprise, but Andrew Marshall could be in that mix too. But he mentioned Barney specifically as maybe in like a lead punt. I took it as kind of a lead punt returner role, which again, not a shocker, but that could happen. I think there's sometimes everybody wants to look at names that are just got here for that, and maybe it will be, but don't discount Barney could be that guy too.
When we go back to the beginning of this podcast, Bruntz talked about some of the optimism comes from the fact that he thinks this is the best roster. I think it was Bruntz that said that. He thinks it's the best roster that Nebraska's had under Matt Rule. How much of that actually helps out special teams? Because if it's your best roster, your deepest roster, in theory, you should have better guys in those special teams units, or guys that are looking to flash and looking to make plays and looking to make names for themselves. That should matter, right? Like, it might be too easy to draw the line between 2 points, but in theory, if you have a deeper roster, your special teams should benefit from better talent being out there.
I think this year more so than any other year on opening night, like one of us should almost take on the assignment, like going through the whole, like all 4 core units, who's out there, like, and the story, like this is who's at, because I think it's going to become a bigger deal, like recognizing who's out there. And I've said this all along, Nebraska has to get back to where someone on that, 1 or 2 guys on that unit, besides a punter or kicker, but like a guy who's kind of a madman on coverage becomes like like a household name. Like there needs to be somebody who kind of busts out, who's like that guy who, I think that's a big part of success, like for a team and being a lead, is having that. And then it feeds someone else that's younger, that's like, I want to be that guy next year, or try to be that guy this year, So I think that's a little sidebar that's important for that group.
All right. Any final thoughts? Anything we want to get to here on today's show before we pack up and head home?
No. A bit busy weekend though. We'll see a little bit more. They're putting the pads on Saturday in the stadiums. That'll be good to see. Get another glance at things.
Yeah. No, it's always nice to get a little extra, especially coming off of a spring where there was a couple open portions, and then the Husker games, which offered absolutely nothing in terms of takeaways, at least to me, for the team. So I think Saturday will be well received. I'm curious what the crowd looks like, and the weather isn't going to be horrifyingly hot either. So,
and beer, they're selling beer.
Yeah. It's like you're going to a bar where they have a football practice going on. That's what it is.
It's like football's on the TV, except it's like right there.
Yeah. I mean, if they're selling concessions, they're going to make a little money off of that. There's no question. So, BC, you got anything you want to throw in?
No, I've talked enough. But yeah, it feels good now. It feels like we're into something that matters.
Yeah,
our life has meaning. Life has meaning again for us.
You don't want to go back to talking about playoff teams and NIL and house settlements and all of that? No,
not at all.
BC's done with it. He's ready to turn the page.
Moving on.
All right. Well, we have all the conversations you want, whether you want to discuss that stuff or whether you want to talk about who the third string left tackle is going to be at Nebraska. You can find that all at Husker247.com. Join the Boneyard and the discussions that are going on there. Everything we have going. We have plenty of practice coverage. We'll have plenty of fall camp coverage. We'll have recruiting coverage. We'll have basketball coverage. We'll have East-West Shrine Bowl watch lists put out there. We'll have Fan Day information. Whatever you want and need regarding Nebraska football, we have it. That's Husker247.com. We appreciate you checking it out. We appreciate you listening to us today. If you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe and join a growing community that we have going on there. For Brian Christopherson and Michael Bruntz, I'm Mike Schaefer. We're Husker247. We'll catch you next time.